you mentioned earlier is around understanding the behaviors of our people. You mentioned that a couple of times actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. I want to come back to that and talk about it for a little bit. When I think about behaviors, when in general in HR we're measuring lots of things, but many times it's not a behavior specifically. We're not thinking about the actual behaviors we're trying to drive, and yet what I started off with was most of the time we're trying to drive a behavior, get someone to complete this task, do that process, do that form, go through this workflow. We're trying to get people to do these things, sometimes for the sake of compliance, and sometimes because it truly is good for them long term to do those things, even if in the moment it might not feel very fun. And I'm thinking about how do we, it might be a really big question, but how do we identify the right behaviors, whether it's from a performance perspective or from a hiring perspective? Like I can see the benefit of turning away from this person makes me feel good in the interview process to these are the behaviors required for success for this job I'm interviewing them for, and I'm going to try to identify what those behaviors are. Can you talk about that piece of it a little bit? Because this idea of measuring and examining behaviors, I think it's powerful, and yet many of us have probably never stopped to think about how to identify the right behaviors. It's just not a thing we come across day to day. So talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. What a great question this is. Again, there are people you get confused with the terminology, right? For me, it's pretty similar to the confusion that we have with competencies. Well, competence is different in each organization. They define competencies in a different manner. With behaviors, it's starting to happen the same. I have to say behaviors are, better said, intrinsic behaviors are pretty related with how people behave, actually, how they make decisions, right, about them and about others, or regarding others, right? It could be. We have two sides. I'm going to give you an example. We measure behaviors like long-run orientation, if you are patient or impatient, if you are cooperative or not, if you are envious or not, if you are compassionate or not, if you coordinate with your teammates or not, these kind of things. That is the first. And also, it's really important to understand that our talent is different from others organizations' talent. It's different in terms of behaviors, right? Behaviorally. I'm going to give you an example. It's not the same talent that Apple has, that Microsoft has, because as we said previously, the culture is different, right? And you need to attract your right talent in terms of behaviors, right? Because probably your top performance in terms of behaviors is different from others' top performance in terms of behaviors. We are currently doing a project for a multinational call center, and we were describing behaviorally their top performers. And to do that, we need to measure first, we need to assess first, then once we have the data set, we link those behaviors to the KPIs. Yes. And then, okay, your talent in terms of behaviors looks like this, right? Then when you are going to the job market to recruit your talent, you have your recipe, you have your algorithm to attract your talent and hire your talent, because probably that talent is gonna fit you better than if you are blind, if you are hiring using self-reported stuff or different things. I think you need to complement this vision with objective data.
We are seeing in our research in hiring and in other areas of the employment process, or talent process, more and more employers in the last year especially have gone all in on different assessment tools. And part of the reason is we've got to hire someone we can't see, so we're trying to get a feel for that candidate and trying to get some objective data. But part of that also is the conversation around diversity, inclusion, equity. We're trying to find a way to be fair and unbiased. And one of the things you talked about a minute ago, you said, hey, we've got a recipe here, but I don't want someone to hear that and think, oh, we're copying, Francisco over here. We're just hitting copying him for all these, cloning him for these employees. No, we're looking for people that have like some of those you mentioned a minute ago, things like compassion, right? Things like a long-term view, those kinds of things. If you're looking for that doesn't know any sort of boundary related to someone's race or ethnicity or right, their gender, those don't relate to that. It's about about how they're making decisions. And so I wanted to make sure to touch on that piece of it, because I think that's a fundamental difference in a lot of the ways we've hired in the past, a lot of the ways that we select employees. We think about the culture piece. Let's go to the culture thing you talked about a minute ago. We talk about culture. It's
Yeah.
our culture is about honesty and about open communications, but those aren't actual
Yeah.
behaviors. We've got to get beyond those buzzwords to the real behaviors. And that's what I love about what you're sharing here is if we get to that level, we can make better decisions. We can find the right people. The people themselves will be happier because we're rating them on the things we actually want them to do instead of some vague generic term that we've just arbitrarily decided is what the measure of success is going to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think we should talk about culture addition instead of culture fit, right? And that you are eliminating some biases here and some racism, discrimination, gender gaps, or whatever, because we need people that can bring their whole selves to our organization and add value. It's not about fitting, it's about adding value. But to get that, you need to try different things. If you do the same that you are doing till now, nothing is going to change. And when you are putting emphasis on behaviors or people's behaviors, you are assuring that those persons or those employees are going to add you value from the behavioral side, regardless of their competencies or hard skills or technical skills that I suppose that you have it, right? It's about how you behave here. Because I'm gonna tell you one thing. If you are promoting a culture of cooperativeness, that's cool. That's pretty cool. But if your people are not cooperative, you have a really big issue, right? Because we need to talk also about culture alignment, right? And we need to think that the HR pros are responsible to spread the culture and managers to and the C-suite to, but we need to understand what is our culture in terms of behaviors, and then we need to measure again. We need to measure again to understand what's going on there. And then, okay, that is our culture. We are here. We need to close the gap, right? And then we need to start to think more about our people instead of our numbers. Numbers are important. Don't get me wrong. Businesses need to make money. But what is clear here, and probably some research about that, if we get our people engaged, if we get our people happy in the workplace, they are going to perform better and better. And as a consequence, we are going to make more money. There is a discussion about this now, but probably we need to be in the right side. We need to be in the right side, and we need to assess.
I love that we're talking about things that seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. We're talking about humans and emotions and behaviors. That's how we're talking about measurements and numbers and data. And those seems like complete opposite ends, but really being clear on behaviors and pick your use case. When we're hiring, we're going to tell you what behaviors matter, and we're going to look for those behaviors in candidates. And when it comes to performance, we're not going to tell you got a 1, 2, or 3 score, but not give any feedback on it. No, it's here's the behavior we're looking for. If you want to be a 3 or higher, like here's how you do that. And giving people that clarity, that enables you to have this kind of common foundation, a common language you can talk about when it comes to their actual performance. One of the biggest issues I feel like people have in the workplace from an employee perspective is they don't have clear expectations. They don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're waiting on a manager to give them some guidance. And that's not our job. We can't do that for every employee. That's impossible from an HR perspective. But what we can do is encourage our managers, as you were saying, Francisco, encourage our managers to make sure that they are talking about behaviors when it comes to outcomes. Don't just talk about, right, do better, do a good job, work harder, but this is the behavior that I'm looking for. If I see that behavior, I'm going to consider that a success. If I don't see that behavior, won't. And it comes to that the old saying, if it gets measured, it gets done. If we're measuring those behaviors, we're looking for them, I think we're going to start finding them in the right places.
I have many conversations about this too. And one thing that came out to my mind listening to you, Ben, is, okay, we can write on the walls beautiful sentences and quotes about culture and so
values,
on. Values. But we need to take action daily. We need to have this positive intent. We have to be permanently focused on that. And we need to provide with clarity to our managers, okay, we expect this, and we need to address this in this way. The opposite is not acceptable. It's fun. I like the book written by Bob Sutton, The Asshole Rule. We don't want assholes in the workplace, in reality. And if we really believe in compassion, if we really believe in cooperation, in trust, measure it, provide with clarity to our managers and people, and take action, set interventions, protect that energy, that culture. And probably you're going to be in a very different position. Probably you are going to be ahead of your competitors because you are taking care of your people.
Use the word protect there. And one of the lessons I learned early in my career, I worked for a company that was the best place to work. We had a tremendous leadership team and a CEO I still respect to this day, just an incredible leader. And one of the things that he taught me early about hiring and about culture and about behaviors is you don't build a great place to work, you protect it. You protect it from those other, letting that person through just because we need to hire somebody and you end up regretting it later. You protect it from those bad behaviors. You protect it from those things that could tear it down or pull it away from what you want it to be. And so that stuck with me for a long time. It's not about building this thing brick by brick necessarily, but about protecting it from these other outside influences that could come in and damage what you try to build. So I love that. Let's go. We're getting close on time now. If someone wants to connect with you, number one, if you're listening here, give him a high five for hanging out with us because it's late in the day for him. Give him a high five there virtually in the chats. Make sure you click his name and connect with him because I know he'd appreciate it. He just loves talking to the people in the community. But I won't speak completely for you, Francisco. If someone wants to connect with you, besides LinkedIn, is there another way to do that?
I'm very active on Twitter. Actually, everything started on Twitter with Steve Brown almost 1 year ago. And I love to give back to the community, to the HR community, my community. I'm very active on Twitter, on Instagram too, LinkedIn for sure. And now in Clubhouse, I'm hosting a weekly room on Fridays Eastern Time with Trace's phone number, Jeffrey Zapito, and Nikki Hoyland. Touching all the topics related to HR, challenges, HR tech, leadership, management, behaviors, why not, hiring, yeah.
All that fun stuff. Awesome. So he's in all the places you can connect with him. I know, again, he'd appreciate it. You'll end up smarter as a result. I guarantee it. Francisco, sir, I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me. This has been a treat, a pleasure for me. And to everybody else out there, thank you for sticking with us. We'll see you shortly on another session for HR Summer School.
A pleasure. Thank you, Ben. See you soon.